Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye in Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, tensions in Gabon after soldiers hijack a radio station in an attempt at a coup. The failed bid highlights the frustrations caused by President Ali Bongo's ongoing ill health and absence from the country. And Nigeria's military has been accused of attacking press freedoms after troops raid a newspaper's offices in Maiduguri over its handling of a front-page story on the Boko Haram insurgency. And Senegal's first regional express train is just a week away from unveiling, but not everyone's carried away with the big plans. Many of those who live around the track say that they've been left behind, as promises that they would be relocated have been broken. But first, in Gabon, the leader of an attempted coup's been captured and 2 of his men killed after they stormed a radio station and forced techs to help them broadcast a message calling for an uprising. Security forces stormed the building not long afterwards. The bid at a takeover happened as President Ali Bongo was still out of the country. He's been receiving medical treatment abroad since October. The UN and the African Union have condemned any unconstitutional changes of power. Haxi Myers-Belkin tells us more.
A day of spontaneous, scattered protests in the Gabonese capital on Monday. Those minor clashes with security forces undermining an earlier assertion by the country's communications minister that everything was business as usual in Libreville.
Our forces are in control in Libreville. I'm able to move freely through the capital. I can assure you that nothing unusual is happening in Gabon. The government is in place, our institutions are safe, and our citizens are going about their daily lives.
Armoured vehicles could be seen across the capital following an abortive coup attempt earlier in the day.
Gabonese.
After storming the studios of Gabon's state-run radio station in the early hours, a group of army rebels took to the airwaves and social media to call for an uprising. The man issuing the statement identified himself as Lieutenant Kelly Ondo Obiang, deputy commander of the Republican Guard and spokesman for a rebel youth movement comprised of members of the armed forces. The army used tear gas to disperse the some 300 coup supporters who'd gathered outside. A curfew was imposed on the capital and access to the internet was cut off. At around 8:30 a.m, security forces entered the media HQ where the soldiers had been holed up. The government has said that the coup leader has been arrested and 2 of his accomplices killed. Condemnation of Monday morning's events came not only from the government, but also from the African Union, its president tweeting that he rejected all unconstitutional change of power.
Well, security forces have since been ramped up across Libreville and extra checks put in place elsewhere in the country. Our Indira Eteng is in a village on the border with Cameroon where the community is still digesting the news of the unrest in the Gabonese capital.
There is relative calm in KOC, a border town between Cameroon and Gabon, since a coup attempt early Monday. Now, KOC is home to hundreds of business persons who shuttle between Cameroon and Gabon daily. Since the coup attempt early Monday, security has been tightened here in KOC. The divisional officer of the locality tells us that everything is under control. However, he has urged the population to remain calm and very vigilant. Systematic checks are carried out on persons and vehicles getting into Gabon from Cameroon and vice versa. People are a little bit surprised with the coup attempt as they did not see that coming despite their concern about the health of the Gabonese president. Ali Bongo, it should be noted, won the presidential elections narrowly in 2016 and since then he has had the opposition on his neck.
Well, as mentioned by Indira there, Bongo's illness and absence have gone some way to undermine his rule. Critics have grown increasingly unhappy during the months he's been away. The lieutenant who called for the coup on Monday claimed that the army had decided to put itself on the side of the people in order to save Gabon from chaos. Well, Nicholas Germain from Africa Desk is here with more. Nick, what do you think are some of the main complaints about Bongo's presidency, which may have got some of his critics so fired up right now?
Well, the opposition has made several criticisms, and one of them is the fact that they believe he cannot mentally and physically govern the country right now. Since his stroke, in October. Since that stroke, he's been in a hospital in Saudi Arabia. Now he's in Morocco. And then a week ago, he delivered this speech. We see it here. And this speech didn't really convince the opposition. They felt that he appeared weaker than before and that his elocution was not very good. So they weren't really convinced by this video. And their second criticism, his economic management. Gabon's oil represents 50% of the GDP of the country until 2015. That's when oil prices crashed worldwide. And now the oil only represents 25% of the GDP. That means that there's an economic crisis. He imposed austerity measures, which were very unpopular, and you had a lot of strikes in the country. And third big criticism from the opposition, they believe that he wasn't really transparently elected in 2009 when his father died, and then in 2016. Each time there was post-electoral violence and several people were killed. And the observer mission of the European Union in 2016, in its final report, concluded that the election had not been very transparent.
And it's not just about Bongo himself. His family's, for quite a while, its political influence has come in for a lot of flack from political critics in Gabon. Tell us a bit more about the role that may have played in what we saw on Monday.
Absolutely, because Ali Bongo has been in power for 10 years, but before that, his father, Omar Bongo, was in power for 41 years. Omar Bongo, he's really the symbol of the France-Afrique, which is the murky relationship between France and its former African colonies. Omar Bongo, he's been involved in the ELF scandal. ELF was the name given to the former giant oil company, French oil company called Total. It used to be called ELF. He was accused, Omar Bongo, of receiving money from ELF and then giving an easy access to the French to Gabon's oil. He was also accused of funding French political parties, and then in exchange they would support him in case there was a coup attempt. He's always denied those allegations when he was alive. And then in 2010, French judges, they suspected his family of buying luxury flats and villas in France with Gabonese public money, and that investigation is still going on. So as you can see, this exasperation that you see among some Gabonese today, it's not only against one man, Ali Bongo, it's also against a system, a clan, it's against the Bongo dynasty.
So it might have been building for a while. Thanks very much, Nicolas Chemin, there for us from my Africa desk on the attempted coup seen in Gabon on Monday. Well, we cross to Nigeria now, where the military has been accused of attacking press freedoms after troops raided a newspaper's office in Maiduguri over its handling of a front-page story on the Boko Haram insurgency. Soldiers, secret police and civil defence paramilitary took part in a crackdown on the Daily Trust on Sunday. Computers were seized and 2 journalists detained after a reported 5-hour standoff. The army has accused the paper of compromising national security by publishing details of future operations against jihadists. The editor, though, has denied this and condemned the raid as being heavy-handed and unlawful.
They came in with soldiers, about 8 soldiers in our offices on this floor, on the floor upstairs. They had masks on. They had like armored vest on, as if it was like a warfare. They had their AK-47 rifles in here. It was quite an intimidating atmosphere.
Well, Sudan's claimed that it's detained around 800 people during 3 weeks of anti-government protests. The figure is the first given by authorities since unrest began, is far below the 2,000 people that rights activists believe have been held. Authorities say that at least 19 people have been killed in clashes that have broken out since mid-December. That's when President Omar al-Bashir's government rose the price of bread. Police have reportedly used live ammunition to break up rallies, and Amnesty International reckons that at least 37 people have died. Thousands of people took to the streets once again to call for al-Bashir's exit over the weekend. Now, Senegal's first regional express train is just a week away from its unveiling. It's set to transform public transport by carrying over 100,000 people a day to stops between Dakar and the international airport about 50 kilometres away. However, not everybody's carried away with the big plans. Many of those who live around the tracks say that promises that they would be relocated have been broken. Our correspondents report.
Red flags still flutter in the wind on the outskirts of the construction site, a symbol of the long fight put up by residents in Thiaroye, a suburb of the capital and one of the areas hardest hit by the future route of the regional express train.
This is where the future station will be for the express train. There used to be houses all over this area here.
Makodou oversees a victims collective of around 250,000 people impacted by the regional express train in 3 different departments. With just a week until the inauguration, some residents still haven't received their financial compensation or found anywhere else to live. Locals are feeling increasingly frustrated.
Do you hear that noise? Do you hear it? We can't get any sleep anymore. It goes on night and day.
The biggest worry for the displaced is not knowing where they'll go. 3 areas were earmarked as relocation sites by the government last July, but construction has barely begun. Makodou's plans to build his house in the new year will have to wait.
We're the ones who are going to have to pay for this delay. We're going to pay because if the buildings are not ready, we'll have to stay elsewhere and pay more and more rent. It's going to be a problem.
The departmental prefect admits there are some delays, but insists that the displaced will be taken care of.
The President of the Republic has given firm instructions regarding the displacement of the people affected by the project. On top of the compensation included in the social support plan, a plot of land has been given for free, as well as a shopping complex for traders and other social aid.
More than 3 million people live in Dakar, and the regional express trains meant to help relieve some of the notorious congestion on the capital's roads. The railway line will have 14 stops, including the Dakar International Airport, 50 kilometres away.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.